Welcome back, guys. Chris here, and I just got back from Las Vegas at SuiteWorld 2025. So I wanted to give you guys an update of what happened at SuiteWorld, some of the highlights, lowlights, etc. And I'm really going to start off this video just by rolling a little bit of footage that I captured while I was at SuiteWorld this year. I honestly didn't film that much, but I wanted to give you at least a little bit of a sense of what it was like to be in Las Vegas, be at the convention center, in the expo hall, the keynote speaker, even the concert with Pitbull that happened at the end of SuiteWorld. So I'll kind of let this footage roll as I talk more just generally about SuiteWorld. It was a great event this year. I mean, they're all great, but they seem to be getting just every year they get a little bit better. The polish and the level of professionalism on the event, as well as some of the kind of cool side things that you can do and the amenities and things like that, they all just kind of get a little bit better every year. So that was great. There was a lot of attendees. I think last year was somewhere around the 7,000 range, and there was over 8,000 attendees this year. So obviously it continues to grow, but honestly, you probably didn't come to this video just to get SuiteWorld vibes. So let's talk about the main thing that happened at SuiteWorld, which is the releases. What came out, what was announced, and that really all happens at that keynote speech that Evan Goldberg gives every year. And to talk about that, usually what happens in a keynote speech is that there are a bunch of new announcements or upgrades, releases, etc., that all get crammed into the keynote to really make it look like NetSuite's innovating on all fronts every year. They took a little bit of a different approach this year where they decided to really condense it into one major, I don't want to say release because nothing was actually released, but an announcement about what is going to be coming in the future. There was a few other things they talked about after that, and I'll comment on them briefly, but they're just not nearly as important or really significant. So I'll comment on those a little bit. But the big announcement, if you haven't already heard about it, was the announcement of NetSuite Next. Now, if you don't know what NetSuite Next is, I don't begrudge you that. Most people don't. And I will make a full video on NetSuite Next to explain what it is, at least what we know of it, and what is incorporated in that. I'll give a lot more footage on it, etc. But for now, I'll just roll a little bit of footage from a demo that Oracle NetSuite has released and talk a little bit more just briefly and kind of in broad strokes about what it is. The concept is that, let's say you've got your NetSuite system. This is sort of like an alternative system that you can toggle on and off. So you switch into this NetSuite Next system. The user interface looks pretty dramatically different, especially compared to just what you had with NetSuite and then Redwood. This is definitely different looking. It's immediately noticeable. And the big selling point with NetSuite Next is that it comes with this Ask Oracle bar at the bottom. So it's basically a chat bar that's very similar if you've ever used any AI software like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, etc. You can go in there and you can ask it questions, or you can just type in normal plain English something you either want to know, it'll provide insights, or most importantly, you can actually do things in the system using Ask Oracle. So you can go in and say, I want to take this safe search and add another column, or generate a new report based on some questions that I had already asked you about and the insights that you provided to me because of that. So it's a thing that can provide reporting and analytic information as well as actually execute things in the system. And the major selling point of that is that it's kind of AI throughout the system, which is something that obviously NetSuite has not come close to achieving up until this point. So the idea is that we're kind of on the cusp of having AI fully infused into the NetSuite system with NetSuite Next. So that's the general concept of NetSuite Next. And before I talk more about the specific announcement, I actually want to go a little bit into the past to talk about what happened to bring us up until this point. Because if you watch my videos religiously, I actually came out with a video 2 months ago where I talked about NetSuite Next when it was super confidential at that time. So I want to talk a little bit about where kind of we've come from, what specifically was announced and what that means. And then also, what do I think is going to happen moving into the future? All right, so first off, going from a historical standpoint, and there's kind of two avenues we can take. First off, I want to talk just about historically when we look at SuiteWorlds. Keep in mind that if we go back to SuiteWorld 2023, if you remember, just prior to that, the ChatGPT had just blown up. AI was being talked about everywhere. So they made the entire event about AI. They quickly partnered with Cohere, which is an AI company. And the announcement and all the keynote about SuiteWorld 2023 was that AI was going to be entirely infused throughout the system. And it was very vague because obviously nothing had really been done at that time. I think they made maybe 2 releases that came just after that with text enhance and I think bill capture. Both of them were minor, and even now there's not really much to talk about in relation to those. So that was SuiteWorld 2023. It was a lot of hype, not really much delivered at that time. Then you come to SuiteWorld 2024, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about this, but at that keynote speech, they actually showed the Ask Oracle functionality where you can go in, you can chat, type things, it'll give you insights, you can execute commands, etc. They were just sufficiently vague enough in SuiteWorld 2024 to say, wow, look at this thing. Isn't it so cool? This is going to be for things like Analytics Warehouse and planning and budgeting, which certainly did come out. And that was very impressive. But it was not clear for a lot of people at that time that none of that really had anything to do with NetSuite. That was all on the Oracle side, because Analytics Warehouse, planning and budgeting, these are all Oracle products, separate system, totally different. So that happened in SuiteWorld 2024. So just keep in mind that even if we look at what just came out with SuiteWorld 2025, we've already been previewed a lot of this functionality even a year ago, and this still hasn't been released even now. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is just kind of what's been announced at SuiteWorlds. Then if we go back specifically for NetSuite Next, and I talked about this a little bit in the video 2 months ago, NetSuite Next was a project, and I don't have the exact specifics, so I'm going to be a little bit vague on the specifics here. It was a project that's been worked on for many years, and the idea of NetSuite Next was that it was going to be a lower end product, something that would really be a competitor to something like QuickBooks. So companies that are just going on to an accounting system could start off on NetSuite Next, and then when they had grown, they could graduate up to full-scale NetSuite. That was the concept of it. So they were developing this for years. They had plenty of personnel working on this thing. They spent a lot of money on it, and I announced in that video 2 months ago that at the beginning of this year, they'd basically nixed the project and said, okay, good. Everyone that was like these beta testers and clients that were starting to use it as a test case, you guys all have to get off the system. We're not going to be doing this anymore. And that the idea and what I was announcing at the time was that the whole project was completely nixed, but that wasn't completely true, because what they did was it appears that they took a lot of what they had done with NetSuite Next as it was known, but instead of making it as an alternative product, it now became not like a baby product that you then graduate to NetSuite, but kind of like almost like an alternative UI to the existing NetSuite, with a concept that all the existing NetSuite users, and certainly all the new clients coming on board, were going to eventually be operating solely on this NetSuite Next software. Because of course, it comes not only, and now we're coming up to the present time, the idea is that it not only has all the functionality that NetSuite natively has right now, but it also has this Ask Oracle functionality. So you can really have that AI feature throughout the entire system. Now, I'll admit in the present, I still have a lot of questions about what is NetSuite Next exactly going to be, because they showed it off and that's great, but there still is not an exact release date. There was none given. And it begs the question if the product that ended up morphing into this, that was supposed to be a predecessor product. So if we're looking at what you could now consider an alternative product, is it actually going to have all the exact same functionality as NetSuite currently has? Well, what does that mean exactly for the system? If you have custom pages that have exact fields on it, does that mean those things are going to break when you try to transfer over to the new system? Is it all going to be seamless? If it is, then is it really just a major UI overhaul that also has an AI chat feature? That might not be as impressive as maybe some of the alternatives. So there are a lot of questions still outstanding. I am going to be doing a lot of research on that over the next month, trying to get information wherever I can. And like I said, I will do a full-length video on NetSuite Next, at least in terms of what I can find out, and try to give as much context on that. So that's going to be coming in the near future. But the last thing I want to talk about in relation to NetSuite Next is just what do I think at this moment in time is going to happen moving forward. Unfortunately, because there was no release date given, when I talked to the Oracle NetSuite guys, they were pretty in the dark, but a lot of them, I think, more hopefully said that it's going to be coming out with 2026.1 release. I think that's optimistic. Again, considering that even as of 2024, we were basically promised really what we were just shown. We were already promised that a year ago, and then no current release date. We weren't even told that it's coming next year, just some vague, it's coming soon. So whatever that means, my guess is that it's probably a safer bet to say that it would be coming out in 2026.2. I'd find it hard to believe that they would let it go even beyond that, but frankly, these things do happen. NetSuite's not necessarily known as being the fastest as coming out with these new releases. So I'd put my money on 2026.2, but don't necessarily hold me to that. If it can come earlier, that would be fantastic news. So that's it on NetSuite Next. Before I move on to some of the other topics for this video, I should just briefly comment on some of the additional features that were kind of tacked on at the end of the keynote. The first thing was there was a big integration that happened between Bill.com and NetSuite. So there's now the functionality that used to just be strictly on the Bill.com website. They've actually integrated that into NetSuite. So you have a little bit of an accounts payable automation and solution with that. I think that whole area is really interesting. In fact, I'm probably going to come out with some videos on that in the near future, because if you go through, I think there was 100 booths at this SuiteWorld, and each booth has some kind of either a consulting company or some kind of a app solution for NetSuite. And probably 40 or 50% of those apps are strictly accounts payable automations. It is by far, without question, the largest, at least in terms of quantity of apps, solution that goes along with NetSuite, way above inventory management, shipping, accounting features, any of that. Accounts payable specifically definitely gets the lion's share. So this is, I'm assuming NetSuite realizes this is an area that they lose a lot of customers, and they're trying to kind of rope that in. So they did this partnership with Bill.com. I'll make a video specifically on that. I didn't see anything that was dramatically impressive. It might be a great option for you. It definitely, the benefit of just being able to exist in the NetSuite system is a major plus for a lot of people. Bill.com specifically tends to be for smaller companies. So if you're a larger company, you might want to look at some of the other options like Tipalti, etc. But it is something to keep in mind. In terms of other features, there was one thing that I actually talked about in my NetSuite news video from August, where they came out with a subscription dashboard. So for companies that are SaaS companies, it's a great dashboard. I commented on it at the time. I thought it was really cool. It came out with the 2025.2 release. And it's something that if you are a SaaS company, I think it's great. It's something you don't have to customize on your own. It comes off the shelf, which is awesome. It's just at this point not particularly newsworthy because this already came out a couple months ago. They also commented on some AI functionality being added to the NetSuite connector that came out last year. This is kind of like their competitor to Celigo. I'll make a whole video on that and talk about whether I think it's good, some of the pros and cons, so I don't really want to comment on that too much in this video. And then the last thing they talked about was the fact that NetSuite Analytics Warehouse basically has this AI functionality already in it. I've already talked about that in this video. That is not a NetSuite product. That is an Oracle product. Very different. So frankly, I just don't feel like it's relevant to bring up in a NetSuite video. So we'll leave that as it is. So those were the announcements from the keynote. Let's talk briefly about what I consider were some of the highlights and the lowlights of SuiteWorld overall. First off, the event production for the keynote speech specifically was incredible. I've actually worked in event production for a number of years, so I know how much work goes into that. For things that might seem trivial, can actually be an enormous amount of work. They completely redid the keynote stage and that whole environment. They made it like starlight all throughout. They put the stage in the middle, which has got plenty of technical problems that come along with that. And they had this whole performance with dancers and drones flying through. It was amazing. It was so much better than anything that they've done in the past. It was very, very impressive. So I was happy to see that. And hopefully they continue to have these kind of incredible keynote speeches moving forward. Secondly, just in terms of Las Vegas at this time, obviously this is mid-October compared to we've had SuiteWorlds in August that can be incredibly hot at that time. The weather was absolutely perfect at this time, so I continue to hope that they have October SuiteWorlds because it's really just the ideal time to be in Las Vegas. It's nice and warm in the daytime, nice and cool at night, so that was excellent and much appreciated. And then the last highlight that I want to comment on is not something I would say is a SuiteWorld highlight particularly, but something that was relevant to SuiteWorld was the fact that out of all of these booths that they had at SuiteWorld, no matter what the booth was offering, everyone was trying to claim that they're bringing in AI functionality or they're having AI infused in whatever they're doing. So that's just kind of a given. That's mostly hype. But there were a number of booths that I saw this year that were strictly AI features and not AI tools outside of NetSuite, but some of them had managed to incorporate AI features into NetSuite. So you can be in the system, kind of like what we're talking about with NetSuite Next, but already existing with some of these apps where you can go in, you can build AI agents, you can have them do things for you in the system, which is the direction that we're all hoping goes with NetSuite. And they exist right now. Just to comment off the top of my head, I think those 5 that I saw. So you've got ones like Causey AI, there was AI ERP Labs, there was 369 AI. So if you're interested in getting some of the AI functionality and you don't want to wait around for NetSuite Next, there are products that exist right now that you can check out. And no doubt in the near future, I'll come out with videos where I dive into these and I see which ones are actually best and really fulfill the hype that we've been hearing about for so long. So that's it in terms of the highlights. From a standpoint of lowlights, really just 2 things I want to comment on. One is the fact that didn't appear that there were any new releases with SuiteWorld 2025. You either had things like NetSuite Next, which are coming in the future, but uncertain when. You have things that were actually released a couple months ago, like the SaaS dashboard or the Bill.com integration. Those came out with 2025.2 release. And then things that have been around for years, like NetSuite Analytics Warehouse. So it's just a little bit unfortunate that there wasn't actually anything that I noticed that you could grab onto to say, wow, this was something that just got released as a part of SuiteWorld 2025. The second lowlight I want to talk about is really something that's been happening for years, and it just kind of got solidified for me with SuiteWorld 2025, is the fact that NetSuite appears to be, in my opinion, ceasing to be its own entity and more just becoming another product within the Oracle ecosystem. So if you look at things like OCI and Oracle Cloud Fusion or products like OpenAir, planning and budgeting, etc., when you look at NetSuite Next, which is the direction that NetSuite is moving, it has purely an Oracle UI. They're clearly moving in that direction. The entire AI feature is called Ask Oracle. So it makes me wonder, if we fast forward 10 years in the future, are we going to have NetSuite teams, or is it really just going to be all Oracle? Are we going to have a SuiteWorld, or is that just going to be another product that's featured at CloudWorld, or what they now call AI World, which is the Oracle convention? So certainly from Oracle's standpoint, that's a good thing. SAP has certainly done a very similar thing of kind of bringing everything together and whitewashing things to just be all a collection of SAP products. So while that might be good for the company, I definitely know that amongst consultants and I think amongst clients, they're not particularly enthused with the idea of not dealing with NetSuite, but being kind of part of the Oracle ERP ecosystem, you could say. So that wraps up this SuiteWorld 2025 video. I know it probably didn't seem the most enthusiastic video overall, but really the event was great, and I am hopeful that NetSuite Next comes A, soon, and B, really delivers on the promise that they are proposing. So with all of that in mind, if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Keep in mind, a lot of the things I discussed in this video, I'm going to be coming out with specific videos on each of those topics in the very near future. So if you want to catch any of those, hit that subscribe button and put the bell notification on so you actually get notified when those videos come out. And with all of that in mind, I hope to see you in the next video.